The alien Empress cornered me against wall and said, "You want peace, human? Then marry me." I stood frozen, not because I feared her towering form or the obsidian claws glinting under the ship's cold lights, but because her eyes held something no human had ever seen in a conqueror's sorrow. Her name was Vela, and she ruled the Calyx Empire, a civilization that spanned 7 galaxies and crushed rebellions before breakfast. She wore armor that shimmered like liquid night, and her skin glowed, faintly violet under stress. She had just finished burning 3 human colonies to ash, not out of cruelty, but because they refused to surrender peacefully. Now she stood before me. Lily Carter, a lowly xenolinguist dragged from a refugee transport and brought to her warship not as a prisoner, but as a guest. He had studied alien languages since I was 12, dreamed of first contact, imagined handshakes and shared star charts. Not this, not the smell of scorched metal and the distant wail of dying engines. Vela tilted her head, her voice low and rough like stones grinding together. "You speak our tongue better than my own diplomats." Howie swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I listened," I said simply. "I listened to your broadcasts, your poetry, your war chants, even your lullabies. You sing of unity, not conquest." He blinked once, a gesture I had learned meant surprise among her people. Then she stepped closer, her breath warm and smelling of something sweet like crushed berries. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Neither," I said. "I am just tired of lies." That made her pause. She turned away for a moment, gazing out the viewport at the burning remains of Earth's outer colonies. Then she spun back, her expression unreadable but softer. "You want peace, human? Then marry me." The words hit me like a plasma bolt. I stared at her, certain I had misheard, but her gaze held steady, unblinking, serious. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because you see me, not just the Empress, but the woman beneath the crown," she said. "Because you understand that war is not glory. It is grief dressed in armor, and I am weary of wearing it." I wanted to laugh, but fear kept it locked in my chest. Marrying an alien Empress was not in any survival manual, had read. But then again, neither was surviving the Calyx invasion. "What happens if I say no?" I asked. She did not flinch. "Your people burn until they kneel or die, your choice. And if I say yes?" She stepped forward again, close enough that I could see the tiny scars along her jawline, battle marks she never hid. Then she placed a 3-fingered hand gently on my cheek, her touch surprisingly warm. "You become my consort, not my slave. Your voice will be heard in council. Your people will be spared, and perhaps one day we will build something new together. Not empire, not colony, but uniony." Looked into her eyes and saw not a monster, but a leader drowning in duty. Someone who had carried the weight of 1,000 worlds alone for too long. I took a deep breath, then nodded yes. The ceremony happened 3 days later aboard the Imperial flagship. Not in some grand throne room, but in the ship's quiet observation deck where stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Vela wore no armor, only a simple robe woven from starlight thread, and I wore a dress made from salvaged human fabric stitched by her own hands. She had insisted on it. No one else was present, just us and the silent hum of the ship around us. She took my hands in hers, her claws retracted so she would not hurt me. Then she spoke words in the old tongue, words I had only read about in forbidden archives. Words of binding, not of ownership but of partnership. When she finished, she kissed my forehead. Not my lips, a gesture of respect, not possession. From that day forward, I was Lily Carter, consort of the Calyx Empress and voice of humanity. The first month was chaos. Human survivors called me traitor. Others called me savior. Vela faced rebellion from her own generals, who saw me as a weakness, but she silenced them not with fire but with reason. She showed them how human ingenuity had repaired damaged fleet systems, how our art soothed war-weary soldiers, how our children laughed in ways that reminded even the sternest Calyx of their own lost youth. I learned to walk beside her, not behind her, to speak when I disagreed, to challenge her, when she leaned too hard into old habits of control. One evening, as we stood on the bridge watching a human colony ship dock safely for the first time in years, she turned to me and said, "You changed everything." I smiled softly. "No, you did. You just needed someone to remind you that peace is not surrender. It is choice." She reached for my hand, And this time I did not hesitate. To take it, months passed and the war truly ended. Not with a treaty signed in blood, but with shared meals, shared stories. Shared dreams. A human school opened on a calyx world. A calyx healing garden bloomed on Mars. Children of both species played. Together under twin suns, Vela and I never had children of our own. But we became mothers to a new kind of future. One built not on fear but on understanding. One night, as we sat on our private balcony overlooking a city where human and calyx lights twinkled side by side, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. I thought of all I had lost: my home, my old life, my certainty. But then I looked at her, at the way her violet skin caught the moonlight, at the quiet strength in her posture, and I knew the answer. "Never," I said, "because you did not ask me to give up being human. You asked me to help you become more than just an empress." She smiled. Then a rare, full smile that lit up her whole face, and for the first time since the war began, I saw hope not as a fragile thing, but as something strong enough to hold two worlds together. And in that moment, I knew peace was not the absence of war. It was the presence of trust. They called us the unlikely pair, the human, and the empress, the dreamers who dared to believe that love could be a language even stars understood. And maybe they were right. Because in the end, it was not weapons or treaties that saved us. It was a simple yes, spoken in a corridor filled with smoke and sorrow. A yes that echoed across galaxies. A yes that became a home. Peace settled over the alliance like morning mist. But Lily Carter knew better than to trust calm skies. The Calyx Empire had stopped burning human worlds. Yet old wounds festered in silence, and not all scars healed. The same way she walked the corridors of the Imperial Spire, now with purpose. Not fear, but eyes still followed her. Some filled with hope, others with quiet hate. Vela remained steadfast beside her, never letting doubt show in public. But at night in their shared chambers, Lily saw the weight return. The Empress would stare at star charts for hours, tracing roots of old invasions as if searching for a path back to innocence. One morning a distress call crackled through the comms. A human settlement on Ceres Minor had vanished. No signal. No survivors, only static and a single looping message in broken calyx leave. Or Diavela's generals demanded immediate retaliation. They called it a test of loyalty. Lily knew it was a trap. Someone wanted the fragile peace to shatter, stood before the War Council barefoot in a simple tunic. No robes, no titles, just a human woman speaking truth to power. If we attack, we prove the doubters right. That this union is a lie. She said if we send a war fleet, we become the monsters. They, remember, silence filled the chamber. Then Vela rose, her voice calm but edged with steel. We send no war fleet. We go ourselves. The journey to Ceres Minor took 3 days aboard a small scout vessel. No insignia. No weapons. Just 2 women and a pilot, named Cor, who barely spoke but whose eyes held kindness. Lily spent the trip studying the looping message again and again, until she noticed something odd. The syntax was wrong. The phrasing clumsy, like someone mimicking calyx speech without understanding its soul. When they landed, the settlement was empty, but not destroyed. Tables still held half-eaten meals. Toys lay scattered in dust. No signs of struggle, only fear frozen in time. Then they found the bunker beneath the schoolhouse. Inside huddled 23 children, all human, all silent, their eyes wide with terror. They flinched when Vela stepped forward, but Lily knelt slowly, speaking soft words in English, then in Calyx, then in the old tongue of Earth's first peoples. Slowly, a girl named Maya spoke. They came in the night. Not Calyx, not human. They wore masks made of bone and sang songs that hurt our ears. They said the Empress lies. They said humans who trust aliens will burn. Lily's blood ran cold. These were not rebels, they were purists, humans who believed coexistence was betrayal. Vela crouched beside her, voice low. We have seen this before on my world after the Great Schism. They called themselves the Pure Ones. They vanished centuries ago. But they did not vanish. Lily realized. They fled. They found us back on the ship. Vela ordered a full scan of nearby sectors, not for weapons, but for hidden bases. For old human freighters retrofitted with stolen tech. Within hours, they found it a derelict station orbiting a dead moon. Its power signature faint but active. They boarded under cover of solar flare. No alarms, no guards, only whispers echoing through rusted halls in the heart of the station. They found the leader, not a general, not a warlord, but a woman Lily recognized. Dr. Elena Mitchell, once a xenobiologist on Mars Colony 3, a woman who had published papers on interspecies ethics. You betrayed everything we stood for. Elena hissed when they confronted her in the control room. You gave our future to monsters, Vela. Did not raise her voice, monsters. Do not build schools, monsters. Do not weep for lost children. You call us monsters, yet you stole children to make your point. Who is the real beast here? Elena lunged, not with a weapon, but with a data chip I recorded. Everything, your lies, your secrets, your weakness, the galaxy will see you for what you are. Lily stepped between them, not with force, but with sorrow. You think secrets keep us safe, Elena. But secrets are cages. You built this station not to protect humanity, but to hide from change. For the first time, Elena faltered, her hands trembling. They took her into custody not to punish, but to heal. The children were returned to their families, the station dismantled, not destroyed, but repurposed into a learning center where humans and Calyx could study together. Back on the spire, Vela sat alone on the balcony, the stars reflecting in her eyes. I thought ending war would be the hard part, she said softly. But keeping peace is harder. Lily joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. Peace is not a place you reach, she said. It is a path you walk every day. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes you carry someone else, but you keep walking. Weeks later, a new message arrived, not from rebels, but from the Outer Rim, colony's humans who had lived beyond Earth's reach for generations. They had heard of the alliance they wanted to meet. Vela looked at Lily and smiled for the first time in days. Should we go? Lily nodded. Yes, but not as Empress, and consort this time as teachers. Their ship launched at dawn, painted not in war colors, but in soft blues and greens. The colors of Earth and Calyx sky blended together. As they passed the orbit of Mars, Lily saw something new. A garden floating in, space grown by human hands, and Calyx light filled with flowers that bloomed only when both species tended them. She reached for Vela's hand and felt the warmth return, not just of skin, but of purpose. The galaxy was still vast and full of shadows, but for the first time in centuries it also held light. Not from weapons, but from shared hope. They flew toward the unknown, not to conquer, but to listen, and in that silence between stars, Lily knew they were not just building peace. They were becoming. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be more Elenas, more bunkers, more fear dressed as righteousness. But they had something stronger than fear. They had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to turn a whisper into a song that even the stars would learn to sing. The end of one war was just the beginning of 1,000 small choices to trust, to try to reach across the dark. Lily Carter, once a linguist, now a bridge, stood ready. Not as a hero, but as a human who said yes when the universe asked for courage, and that yes still echoed not in treaties, but in every child who played without fear. In every garden grown on alien soil, and every hand that reached out not to strike but to hold. Peace was not a moment, it was a promise. And they would keep it together. The silence came without warning. One morning the song stopped, not all at once, but like a thread pulled slowly from a tapestry. The crystal in the Unity spire dimmed, the orb from the ring grew cold, and across every world, every ship, every home, the shared hum that had held the alliance together faded into nothing. Lily felt it first in her bones, a hollow space where warmth used to live. Vela stood at the window, watching the city below. People moving slower, their faces clouded with confusion. Not fear, not anger, just loss, as if they had forgotten how to connect. What happened? Lily whispered. Vela turned her eyes dark with worry. The song did not break. It was taken. They traced the silence to its edge, a ripple in space near the hush. The same place where the ring had been. But now there was only emptiness and a single drifting pod, human design, old and battered. Inside they found a child no older than 6, wrapped in a blanket stitched with Calyx symbols and human stars. The girl did not speak, but clutched a small device. It screened dark. Lily knelt beside her, humming the old melody softly. The girl flinched, then slowly uncurled her fingers. On the device a message played in a voice Lily knew too well. Elena Mitchell, you thought you ended me, she said. But silence is the loudest weapon of all. I found the source of your song and I unplugged it. The screen showed a facility buried in a dead moon, its walls lined with stolen crystals and orbs all drained. Dryalina had not been healed. She had been waiting, and now she had silenced the heart of the Alliance. They returned to the spire with the girl whom they named Naya, meaning hope in an old Earth Tungwania, did not speak, but she watched everything, her eyes too old for her face. The council, panicked, some called for war, others for isolation, but Lily stood before them holding Naya's hand. Elena did not steal the song, she reminded us. It was never ours to own. It was always a gift, and gifts must be given. Not forced. Vela nodded. We do not go to fight. We go to listen. They flew to the dead moon, not with weapons, but with empty hands. The facility was cold, dark, the air thick with the scent of burnt circuits. Selena waited in the central chamber, surrounded by the drained relics. You are too late, she said. The silence is spreading already. Your precious alliance is crumbling without its crutch. Lily stepped forward. Not with anger, but with sorrow. You think silence is power, but it is only fear. Dressed in quiet, Elena laughed, bitter and sharp. You do not understand. Humans need certainty. Not songs, then let them choose. Lily said. She turned to Vela and nodded. Together they sat on the floor in the center of the room and began to sing. Not the full song, not the polished harmony of the spire, but something raw, something broken. Lily sang a lullaby her mother used to hum. Vela sang a Calyx morning chant for fallen warriors. Their voices did not match. They clashed and wavered, but they did not stop. Elena watched, arms crossed, face hard. Then, Nia stepped forward. She did not sing with words, but with taps on the floor, a rhythm simple and steady, and slowly Elena's shoulders dropped. A tear fell because the song was not about perfection. It was about presence. Elena sank to her knees. Not in surrender, but in release. I was so afraid, she whispered, afraid that if we let go of anger we would disappear. Lily reached for her hand. You will not disappear. You will become more. They carried the drained relics back to the Unity Spire, not to restore them, but to bury them in the garden as seeds. The real song was never in the objects. It was in the people, and people could still choose to sing. Slowly the Alliance healed, not all at once, but in small moments. A Calyx farmer shared water with a human neighbor after days of silence. A human teacher played an old Earth song in class, and a Calyx student added harmony. Nia began to speak, first in single words, then in full sentences, always asking why and how and what if. She became the first child of the new way, raised not in fear of difference, but in curiosity. Lily and Vela taught her both languages, both histories, both dreams. One evening, as they walked through the garden, now filled with flowers that bloomed only when tended by mixed hands, Nia asked, will the silence come back? Lily looked at Vela, then at the stars. Maybe, she said, but next time we will not need a crystal to remember how to sing, because the song is in us, not as a command, but as a choice. Years passed, the Unity Spire grew, not taller, but wider. New wings built by human hands and Calyx Lightmore species joined, not because they were asked, but because they heard the echoes of a song that welcomed all voices. Lily's hair turned silver, Vela's skin lost some of its glow, but their hands still fit together like they were made for it. They never ruled, they guided, never demanded, they invited, and the galaxy responded not with obedience, but with trust. On the day Nia left to travel the stars as an ambassador, Lily gave her a small stone, not a crystal, not an orb, just a smooth river stone from old Earth. When you feel alone, she said, hold this and remember you carry the song inside you. Vela added, and if you forget, just listen. The universe is always singing back. As Nia's ship vanished into the stars, Lily leaned against Velado. You think we did enough? Vela kissed her temple. Enough is not the point. The point is we kept trying. And that was the truest song of all. Not grand, not perfect. Just persistent love as action piece is daily choice. They sat on the balcony as they had done so many times before, watching the lights of the city twinkle below, human and Calyx and a dozen other kinds, living not in perfect harmony, but in honest effort that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. And in the quiet between heartbeats the song began again, not from a crystal, not from a memory, but from two voices choosing to sing together, one more time. and then one more after that, until the stars themselves learned the words, and the silence never won, because love always finds a way to speak. The dream came again, not as vision but as memory. A place Lily had never been yet knew in her bones. White stone towers rising through mist, a city built on clouds and silence. She woke gasping, Vela already beside her, hand on her shoulder. Steady. As always, you were calling a name. Lily blinked, sweat cooling on her skin. I do not know it, but it felt like home. The next morning the weaver's crystal pulsed. Not with song, but with image. The same towers, the same mist, and beneath them, a symbol, a circle split by a single line like a horizon at dawn. Vela studied it. Her brow furrowed. This is not in any Calyx archive, not in human records either, but Lily felt it pull at her like a tide. They prepared the dawn whisper again. Not for war, not for rescue, but for return, though. Neither knew what they were returning to as they left the Unity Spire. Children waved from the gardens, elders bowed their heads in quiet respect. No one asked where they were going. They trusted the bridge to lead. The journey took them beyond the rim, past the last mapped star, into a region the old charts called the Hush, a place where signals died and time seemed to slow. On the seventh day, the ship's instruments failed, not broken, but quiet, as if the universe itself held its breath. Then they saw it floating in the void, not a planet, not a station, but a ring of stone impossibly large, turning slowly around nothing, and on its inner curve the city from Lily's dream. They landed on a platform of smooth white stone, no guards, no gates, only wind carrying a scent like rain and old paper. The city was empty, but not abandoned. Meals sat on tables, books lay open on benches, toys rested near fountains that still flowed with clear water. Lily walked as if guided, her feet knowing the path before her mind did. Vela followed, silent, watchful. The city's heart stood a great hall, its doors open, the same symbol carved above the entrance. Inside waited a figure robed in silver hair, long and white skin pale as moonlight. It turned as they entered and smiled. You remember, she said. Lily's breath caught because she did not in words but in feeling. This was where she had been before Earth, before human life, before time. As she knew it, the woman stepped forward. You were one of us once, a keeper of balance, sent to live among the young ones, to learn their fire, their fear, their love. Vela stiffened but did not speak. Lily looked at her, then back at the woman. Why did you call me back? Because the balance shifts. Again, the woman said, the song you carry is strong, but it needs roots. Not just wings. You must choose. Choose what to stay and remember all that you were, or return and remain who you have become. Lily's chest tightened. She looked at Vela, standing, tall even in this place of ancient power. Her claws sheathed, her eyes full of trust, not demand. If Lily stayed, the war would never have happened, the pain, the loss, the burning worlds all undone. But then she thought of Maya, the girl from Ceres Minor, now learning Calyx poetry in school. She thought of the garden on Mars where human and Calyx children planted seeds together. She thought of Vela, humming a lullaby in the dark after nightmares. Those moments were real, not erased by forgotten pasts. I'm not who I was, she said softly. I am who I chose to be. The woman nodded as if she expected this. Then she turned to Vela. And you, Empress of Stars? Would you let her go if she chose to stay? Vela did not hesitate. No, but I would not ask her to stay. If her soul called elsewhere, the woman's eyes softened. Rare is the love that gives freedom instead of chains. She walked to a pedestal and lifted a small orb filled with swirling light. This is the core of memory it holds. All you were, all you forgot. But to take it is to lose the life you built. Lily reached for it, then stopped. What if I take only a piece? The woman smiled. You always were clever. She split the orb into two halves, one bright, one dim. The bright half held the full memory. The dim half held only the lesson, not the life. Lily took the dim half, warmth spread through her. Not knowledge, but understanding. She saw the weavers not as gods, but as guides who believed growth came through choice, not control. She saw herself not as a lost soul, but as a seed planted in chaos that grew anyway. When she opened her eyes, Vela was crying. silent tears tracing the line of Lily's jaw with a claw retracted so gently. "You are still you," she whispered. Lily nodded. "And you are still mine." They left the city not as strangers but as witnesses. The ring of stone faded behind them as if it had never been. Back on the dawn whisper, Lily held the dim orb. It pulsed softly like a second heartbeat. "What will you do with it?" Vela asked. "Teach," she said, not as a keeper, but as a student who finally understands the lesson. When they returned to the Unity Spire, they did not announce a revelation. They simply began the central square. Lily placed the orb beside the weaver's crystal, and the two sang together. Not the same song, but harmonies that wove past and future into now. People gathered not because they were told to, but because they felt it. A shift in the air. A deepening of peace. A Calyx elder touched the orb and wept, remembering a childhood on a world long gone. A human child laughed as colors danced in the air, shapes of old earth animals and Calyx sky serpents playing together. The alliance did not become a religion. It became a practice. Every morning schools began with a moment of shared breathe. Every evening families shared one story from another. Culture leaders were chosen not for strength but for empathy. And Lily and Vela walked among them, not above them. One night as they sat on their balcony watching the twin moons rise, Lily leaned her head on Vela's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I took the full memory?" Vela wrapped an arm around her. "Then I would have lost you. Not to death, but to distance. You would have remembered everything but forgotten. Why you stayed." Lily closed her eyes. "I stayed because love is not about where you came from, it is about who you choose to walk with." And they walked still, not toward an end, but into each day as it came, with open hands, open hearts, and songs that grew richer. With every voice added, the universe was vast and full of mysteries. But they had learned the greatest truth. Home is not a place, it is a person. And theirs was right beside them, always. The stars watched, and for the first time in eons, they felt hope not as a flicker but as a steady light burning softly in the hands of those who dared to care. The signal came not as a scream but as a sigh. A faint pulse from the edge of known space so weak most scanners would have missed it. But Lily Carter had learned to listen to silence. And in that silence she heard Pain. Vela stood beside her on the observation deck of the Unity Spire, their shared home. Now a symbol not of conquest but of coexistence. The Empress's violet skin dimmed with concern. This frequency, it is old, older than the Calyx Empire. Lily traced the waveform on the screen. It matches no known language, but the rhythm, it is like a heartbeat, slow and tired. They decided to go alone again. Just the two of them in a small vessel named the Dawn Whisper, painted in the blended hues of earth green and Calyx silver. No weapons, no escort, only supplies and hope. The journey took 17 days, during which Lily taught Vela old human lullabies. And Vela showed Lily how to read starlight as a map, not just for navigation, but for memory. Each star a story, each cluster a song. On the 18th day, they founded a derelict ship adrift in the void, its hull scarred by time, not battle. The markings were strange. Neither human nor Calyx, but something older, something forgotten. Inside, the air was stale but breathable, and the walls hummed with residual energy like a sleeping mind. They moved carefully through corridors lined with murals, faded, but still vivid enough to show beings with many eyes and flowing limbs, beings who built cities among asteroid rings and sang to black holes in the heart of the ship. They found the source of the signal, a single chamber with a stasis pod. Its glass frosted over. Vela placed a hand on it, and the frost melted, revealing a figure inside, tall, slender, with skin like polished stone and eyes closed in long sleep. The pod opened with a sigh of ancient air, and the being stirred. It did not speak. Not with voice, but with thought. Images flowing into Lily's mind. Not words, but feelings. Loneliness. Sorrow. A warning. Lily gasped, and fell to her knees, overwhelmed. Vela caught her, holding her close slowly. The being rose. It moved like water given form, and looked at them not with fear, but with recognition. You are the bridge it sent, not in words, but in shared understanding. You are the first who came not to take, but to listen. Lily found her voice trembling. Who are you? We were the weavers, the ones who taught stars to shine in harmony. We watched your kinds rise, we watched you fight. We waited for someone to remember that all life is one song. Vela stepped forward, bowing her head in respect. Why did you call us? Because the silence is breaking. Something stirs in the deep dark. Not war, not hatred, but hunger. A force that eats memory, that turns song into static. It comes, and your alliance is the only light bright enough to hold it back. Lily looked at Vela, then back at the Weaver. What must we do? Learn the old song. The Weaver replied, and teach it to your peoples, not with laws, but with living. The Weaver could not travel its body too frail, but it gave them a gift, a seed, not of plant, but of sound. A crystal that pulsed with soft light, and when held close, hummed a melody that made the heart feel whole. They returned to the Unity Spire, not with answers, but with purpose. The council was skeptical. A song against a cosmic hunger, it sounded like madness. But Lily and Vela did not ask for belief. They asked for trust. They began in the smallest places. In schools, children learned to sing together human notes, and calyx harmonics blending into something new. In hospitals, the crystal was placed in healing rooms, its hum calming minds scarred by war and farms, on ships and homes. People gathered not to speak, but to listen to the quiet between sounds. At first, nothing changed. The stars still burned, the ship still flew, but slowly something shifted. A calyx soldier who had nightmares of battle found peace humming the melody while polishing his armor. A human engineer who hated aliens began sharing tea with her calyx neighbor after hearing their child sing the song at school even. The purists who had followed Elena began to question their rage when they heard the song echoing from refugee camps. Then the signs appeared on the outer rim colonies. Lights flickered not from power loss but from something passing through space. Something that left no trace but a cold emptiness where sound should be. The Weaver's warning was real. Vela called for unity. Not through force but through invitation. Every world, every station, every ship was asked to join in a single moment of song at the turning of the galactic cycle. Lily stood on the central plaza of the Unity Spire, microphone in hand. Not to speak but to begin. She took a breath and sang the first note, simple, pure. Then Vela joined her voice deep and resonant like stone meeting water. Then others joined, humans, calyx, even a few from newly contacted species who had heard rumors of peace. The song spread through comms, through relays, through the very air until it filled the sector, and in the void beyond the edge of light the hunger paused. It had no name, no form, only a need to consume, but the song was not food. It was presence, and presence cannot be eaten. Only shared. The darkness receded, not defeated but confused, as if it had never encountered something that offered itself without fear. Back on the spire, Lily leaned against Vela, exhausted but smiling. Did we stop it? She asked. Vela watched the stars twinkle back to life. We reminded the universe that it is not alone. In the weeks that followed, the alliance grew not by treaty but by choice. More species reached out, not for protection, but for connection. They had felt the song even across light years, and wanted to add. Their voice, Lily and Vela, traveled again. Not as rulers, but as listeners, visiting worlds, learning songs, gathering stories. On a quiet moon orbiting a blue giant, they sat by a fire made of bioluminescent moss. Do you think we were chosen? Lily asked Vela, stirred the embers with a stick. No, I think we chose each other. Lily smiled. Yes, we did. The crystal. The Weaver had given them now rested in the heart of the Unity Spire, not as a relic, but as a teacher. Its song changing slightly each day, as new voices joined. Peace was no longer just the absence of war. It was a living thing breathing through a million acts of kindness, through shared meals, through children playing in mixed light, through songs sung in languages that had once been enemies. One evening, as they walked through a garden where earth roses grew beside calyx flame blossoms, Lily stopped and touched a petal. Remember when I thought marrying you was the hardest thing I would ever do? Vela took her hand and kissed her knuckles gently. That was only the first note, and the song goes on. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs together they had turned a corridor of fear into a home, a war into a promise, a whisper into a symphony that even the dark could not silence. And as the twin suns set, painting the sky in gold and violet, Lily knew they were not just saving worlds, they were teaching them how to sing. The end was never the point. The point was to keep singing even when no one was listening. Especially then, because somewhere in the vast quiet of space another lost soul might be waiting for a single note of hope, and they would be ready, with open hearts and open voices, to answer.